Hi everyone, thank you for watching us. Today we are having Hugo Ortiz Dubon. Thank you so much for coming. How are you today?
I'm fine. Nice seeing you, and thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, likewise. You have a very interesting life. You were an ambassador during one of the most controversial tech experiments in recent history when El Salvador adopted Bitcoin. What was it like to be in the room for that decision?
First of all, it was very transformative because nobody has done this before. And, have that kind of leadership and political willingness to go through with it. I think that entitles a team and a strategy to look long term. To be part of the team of El Salvador, I think that was very interesting. It also, I was already in my position here in Brussels. So it's like a little bit of going in and steering the pot with something new that nobody and a lot of people didn't understand. So it was kind of transformative.
Yeah, totally. And you left high-level diplomacy to build a startup. How was it? Why? What was missing in the traditional system that connects?
First of all, I come from the startup industry and in Sweden, and I grew up in Sweden as well. So I well navigated into the innovation that is happening in the Nordics and especially in Sweden. So for me, it was like I really enjoy diplomacy. I learned very much, a lot of tools that you can have into negotiation, also in the private sector. But I was missing that way of, go out there and bring out the new thing you learn and try to create something new, because, the public sector and governments need support with everything that is happening in emergent tech and, and especially with startups. And I think that we need to build that bridge to connect the dots and to start add on tools, structures, infrastructures that can be able for the governments to develop themselves as well. And, in this case, many countries in the global south.
Okay, thanks. And in 2 words, what do you guys do in Norm?
So Norm is the firm that is very specific into B2G contracts and strategy. And we are the bridge between the governments and also startups within the Web3 and crypto to understand how they can plug in. And, many times I've been in conversations that I've seen companies trying to make the government excited, but sometimes they don't have the layers and the tools to understand how to communicate with an established institution, agency, or government, and that's where we plug in, where we can build this bridge and explain and translate it so everyone understand and we can take next step towards the future.
Yeah, very interesting. And I know that, you're coming from this industry, etc., but still, how do you convince a government to work with a startup?
And that's also, it has its challenges, but the most important is to also see what is the added value for the government, and especially countries in smaller countries or in the global south don't have the same development curve as countries in the north. So for them, it's also important to get ahead, and in these new markets, there is many opportunities coming from the community that can be plugged in. So when you show that, aspect where it's an opportunity for everyone, and we're gonna, this collaboration is gonna result in something that is good for the country, good for the communities, but also good for the citizens as well. That's when you start to plug in and you start to understand how this can be a way for advance you into different sectors.
Yeah. But if we go to more details, you work with more than 50 countries, more than 50 governments. What is your secret? How is it network or what?
I'm going to be very honest. I think that it's personal networks. It's important that you have an understanding of what the government needs. You ask the right questions. It's more about what's your vision. towards the country, understand? And sometimes it's also to understand the cultural social codes, because sometimes we want something, but we don't understand how to get there. And you need to have those facilitator, the translator, that can both for the communities and, startups, make them adaptable or aligned with what a country needs. And that's why you need like a more insight of the country, of the region, but also of the continent.
Yeah, totally. So you do like a lot of research, but still it's like a very new thing. So Web3 governments, I guess, don't understand it like very clearly. So what's the biggest challenge to convince a government to work with you guys?
And that's exactly what you said. They don't understand. And, they take the stereotypes of what they hear. No, we shouldn't go that way because it doesn't beneficial. Look at this country. He did that. So important to find really concrete cases and to showcase them in a level that is understandable. Communication is key here. And that's why we also work how we want to communicate so we understand each other and we can, bring on board every person that we meet from the government, from the institutions, from the ministries, even to the technical persons. And, we do this with the startups because we want them identity to also be part of this journey and the narrative that we create.
Yeah, totally. And what do you think? What a government wants from startups? Innovation, control, prestige. What's the real currency in these partnerships?
One of the real currency, and what I notice, is when you invite them on board. When we say we're going to co-create something, I would like to establish a pilot, and let's have a conversation. Let's have those technical meetings with the ones you think needs to be on those, decision-making meetings, create a process, try it out first. That's when you also give the governments the opportunity to marriage in to your vision. And that's something that I think is very, reach a lot of results.
Have you ever said no to a government or a startup because the deal felt like wrong, maybe ethically? And if so, give us an example, please.
Yes, of course. I said both no to governments and ministries within governments that are having a specific list of requirements, and they won't always ask more and try to ask more and get more than is possible. And when it's not possible, I think is direct communication would be very concrete. I think that's one of the solutions towards that. And if the conversation stalls, eventually they will get back to you when they see what you're doing with other kind of initiatives, countries or regions, with companies, of course, if you don't fulfill some parts, even though after the process that we also go in and help you create that narrative and how you should enter the specific market or region, and it doesn't align to how we see it, of course, we know it's not going to be a full result. So I think that is important to save everyone's time.
Yeah, thanks. Very, very interesting. And to be honest, how much of B2G success is about trust and how much is about navigating bureaucracy and egos?
I think that trust is very important, but how to navigate and understand the different layers. It's not only getting a meeting with a high level. It's not only they being interested. It's also getting that high level person's team, expert team, technical advisors to get on board. And that's a leverage of, conversation that it doesn't happen on the record. It's more off the record. So, it's many of those aspects that you need to focus on creating and navigating the bureaucracy, the decision making, layer and layer and layer and layer and layer to be very successful. If you don't have that kind of knowledge, it will be difficult for you to align, or at least when you align, difficult to navigate it. And that's that's always different scenarios that can happen.
Yeah, thanks. You're also advising EU stakeholders on DeFi, but do most regulators even understand what they are regulating? And are they building the plane mid-flight?
I would say that they don't have the full scope. They don't understand it, and I can see it very concretely here in Brussels, because sometimes the one who are part of regulated are, a lot of the experts that understands both sides, but I cannot call me an expert if I don't have the sector on the table, negotiating, discussing what is possible, meeting halfway. And that's why it's important that the sector has something to say. The startup, the developer, everyone in the ecosystem needs to be there, so their perspective is taken in consideration when a regulation is setting up. And that's something that didn't happen here in Europe with the MiCA, for example. And that's something that we need to create that bridge so it gets closer every time we can go in and, adapt those regulations to the reality.
Yeah. And how would you comment Europe and regulations comparing to maybe the US or Asia? And is Europe overthinking innovation maybe?
I think so. I think it's important to open up. And once again, it's not having the full, eyes on the sector, the field, the impact, or the customers, or who is the one who is behind developing the technology. I think that I believe a lot in perspective density, when every one of the perspectives are part of the negotiation. And the regulation here in Europe, unfortunately, has created a lot of obstacles, has created a lot of not enough incentives to create a proactive, growing, innovative market.
Yeah, thanks. And are governments ready for the chaos and decentralization that Web3 promises? Or
not yet, but that's why I'm also part of this, because if I can be part of deciding that path, I would like to invite both startups and governments to understand how we can work together.
Yeah, and what is your prediction? Will we achieve that, or we will be shut down?
I think that there is huge opportunities right now to align that. And that's why it's important that we start to create those spaces and bringing in those actors that can also be able to facilitate that. And this is the moment, and this is the door of opportunity right now. So we better jump on it right now and make that happen in a more collaborative, multiple stakeholder approach, which I think is the way of doing it. And I'm not afraid of doing it here in Europe or in any continent or region specific around the world.
Okay, thanks. And what's something you believe about innovation and government that most people in tech would disagree with?
Sometimes you hear that the governments are very complicated, it's very technocratic, and they don't understand. But I think that I want to reframe it. As long as you understand what they are saying in their own languages, there is many loopholes where you can come in and complement that, and bring in. I think everything is about communication, and I'm ready to showcase that we can lead to more results and show the governments, navigate the governments in a way that we can also set the narrative.
Yeah. Nice. And if you could redesign how governments work with tech from scratch, what would be the first thing you would change?
I think that the government sometimes have specific commitment just to one specific tech industry or company. I think that we need to diversify those kind of solutions and services, and because it's going to be more innovative, more creative, and going to make a bigger impact on what they want to achieve. So that's another part that we can work on.
Okay, thanks. Also, a spicy question. What's a lesson you learned from your most painful professional failure?
That's a very tricky question, but it's, when you have high level individuals in the room, I think that the best is to prepare everyone for a normal in your living room conversation. And sometimes, people can get stressed about it, and that can also define the way the decision maker will decide on what you're presenting, So I think that many of the lessons is like to prepare the people to be in that kind of environment and to just be yourself.
Yeah, totally. But you came from this environment of people. What would you recommend to a normal tech guy from a hub? How to behave, what to do, how to start working with governments, for example?
First of all, don't be afraid, but you need to trust the people that is more aligned to both your value, your vision, and also what you want to achieve. And then whenever you meet the high level people, I think it's important that you're yourself, but you can also try to be open to listen to the other one and take that into consideration and also evaluate also how that can also teach you something.
Thanks. Very valuable advice. And what's one startup that shocked you in a good way during a government collaboration?
Startups that when they have this enthusiasm and, wants to get an opportunity to be themselves where they can showcase what the technology really would do for the country when it's more concrete based. They're not talking about an AI or, a payout system that is developed in the United States, but they are adapting it to, for example, a specific country and a region. When the founder or the startup knows how to do that, you're having another conversation where the government feels seen, acknowledged, and understand. And I think that's the key and I've seen many of the companies doing that, and those conversations are the best because then we are co-creating. It's like we are bringing the government official into a more startup mentality, For me, that's a result.
Very, very interesting. And Hugo, what would be, I don't know if you can talk about it, but still, what is the most problematic government or country you worked with? and vice versa, and what was the easiest one?
No, it's actually a good question, but since I entered diplomacy, I came from the private sector. You learn a lot of tools within diplomacy, and diplomacy is like nobody's your enemy. So you need to also understand yourself on how to listen to people or to actors that you sometimes have questioned or are not aligned with your values, But I think that, no, I cannot specifically say a country, but there is many of the countries that I've been in the conversation that had a position of power and they are using it towards other regions or other countries so I've seen a lot, especially here in Belgium, in Brussels.
Yeah, can imagine. Okay, thanks. Very, very diplomatic answer. Yeah. And what do you want to be remembered for?
Since I was a kid, I always liked to interact with different friends, in friends group, and creating those bridges where we have different kind of perspectives. I think I've seen it many times in my life where it can go to good results, good conversations, good impact. And that's why I'm committed right now to create that and to change the narrative about the Web3, about the crypto, and find concrete cases where startups with the new innovation can show to the established agencies, countries, institutions, we can do this. Let's do it together. And, that's something that I want to be remembered from.
And what's one country most people overlook, but that's quietly becoming a tech superpower?
I have many countries that I can mention, but of course, in every region and sub-region, there is always a country that has a strategy towards becoming the digital hub. But for example, in the African continent, we have many, like Rwanda, we have Nigeria, we have Kenya, and in Latin America, we also have, of course, my country of origin, El Salvador. But there is many others in South America, like Chile, Argentina, and some kind of, Brazil is getting there as well. Singapore, in Southeast Asia. And, the Middle East, we have many hubs, but of course, UAE is one of the interest ones, and Saudi Arabia as well.
Thank you so much, Hugo, for this conversation. It was a real pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And, we are open to have those conversations and to align to all the interesting technology that is out there from the startups. So thank you for having us here.